Hey friends, this is Christy with Little Roots Ranch and the turkeys. Anyways, happy May. Oh, my hands are all dirty. I've been working in the garden today and transplanting some greens. Anyways, I can't believe it's May already. In this video, we're going to talk about just some things to be doing in May, what you can plant, what it's too late to plant, and then just a few little tips and stuff like that. So we'll move right along. It's May. That's so crazy because I feel like May is one of the, besides like the harvesting of the summer, May is one of the most exciting months for gardening. And the reason is that so many things come out. And namely, we get to plant corn. And of course, this is for the Pacific Northwest. I don't know what other regions are doing or if you can plant corn yet or if it's too late or I'm not sure. But we can plant corn, which is really exciting because I know that we all, think about all the corn and knee high by the 4th of July and all of that stuff. Funny story, last year I forgot to plant corn and I only remembered on the 3rd of July and we were driving by a cornfield and I told my wife, I said, do you think we can get it, if I plant it tonight, that we can get it knee high by the 4th of July? Of course, that was a joke. So I didn't plant corn. I should have planted a couple just to see. I'm sure it wouldn't do anything, but always good to experiment. Anyways, this year, I'm not going to be bad, Christy, and forget corn again. And so I've got it on my calendar. May 10th is the day that I'm going to plant corn. I'm going to try a couple things. And I'm a little nervous. As you know, I always forget the difference between moles and voles. One of them eats plants, like plant roots and things like that. And one of them eats like insects and stuff like that. And so I never remember which is which. So I just lump them all together. But I struggle with things planted into the soil because they will take them. And so that includes delicious seeds like pea seeds, pumpkin seeds, cucumber seeds, and of course, a delicious corn kernel. So not last year, because we all know I didn't do that. The year before, I planted a bunch of them and in a block, right? You don't want to do rows, you want to do a block, so they are wind pollinated. And I only had like a couple that I saw them come up and then they were like getting attacked or the seeds were stolen or whatever. And so I'm going to try to transplant them this year. Now, I want to mention with corn, it's kind of like when I transplant my early beets. I don't necessarily recommend it unless you're confident that you can get those transplants out in a timely manner and your bed space is already available. And the reason for that is that corn and beets and, other larger items, all of the cucumbers, melons, all of those things, same deal, is that they don't give you any grace with time at all whatsoever. And so like the corn, from when you put the seed into the cell, it's like, or container, whatever, soil block, it's like 2 weeks, like under that you need to get that into the ground. Like, it's not like it can sit in the corner of the greenhouse or your house or wherever and like, oh, I need to get to that. Like, the corn is well known for its like deep tap root, and there's a reason for that. So pretty much when you see a little bit of I can't talk at all, like a little bit of a stalk like starting to come up, you basically, that tap root is going to be longer than what's above ground. And so you want to move quickly. So I'm trialing that. I've never transplanted corn because it's not ideal. If you don't have pest problems, I would not transplant corn. It's only if you're trying to get a jump on the season or if you're worried about things stealing your sweet corn kernels. The other thing I'm doing this year that's going to be an experiment, and I heard about this from somebody else, and it sounds kind of wild, but I'm going to give it a try, is this gal, she plants 5 seeds all together. And they grow up like multi-sowing technique, right? But they grow up together, and as long as you can feed them, which I can, I have composted chicken manure, that they won't compete with each other and they'll produce amazingly. Now, for me, I'm very interested because I have a limited space. I need to grow as much food as I can in a small space to feed my community. But corn is one of those things that most people don't grow because it takes a lot of nutrients, it takes a lot of time in the garden, and it, for some unknown reason, the value isn't high. You know, if you're talking about a big corn farm that, you know, does everything by tractor and stuff like that, they can get that low price. But my small farm, you just can't, you know, like I can't compete with, you know, however, what is it, like 50-cent corn cobs or something like that? Like, I can't compete with that. But anyways, so I'm going to try that with some of my corn, and I'll do a video and like updates and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to start them in 72 trays, which those are the rectangular ones that have 72 little holes. And I'll seed one kernel per tray. And then at transplant, I'm going to put like, I think I'm only going to go 4, but put 4 together. And see if it works. I'll do some without it too, so I'll be able to like compare and contrast and all that stuff. But if that works, that's a game changer. I remember when I found that out about peppers, and I'll do a video on that as well. But peppers, the same thing. You plant them together. It's crazy. They work well. They don't mind sharing. So those are the 2 things I'm trying with my corn this year. But anyways, so May is time to plant your corn. Mother's Day, which is next weekend for me, depending on when you're watching this video. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers and mother figures and anybody else that identifies within the realm of mother or whatever. And so happy Mother's Day. But that is kind of a legend in the Pacific Northwest as far as when to put everything out. Now, I know that there's some of you who like try to put your tomatoes out in like the middle of March, and I don't blame you. It's better to wait, but you should always be experimenting in your gardening. But Mother's Day or early mid-May is generally a good indicator of when you can put out a lot of things. I still wait a little longer, especially with the crazy spring we've been having this year. But, you know, I would hold off on your eggplants and peppers if you can. But you can slowly bring some, you know, like your, what is it called? Tomatoes, or, you know, and of course it depends on your like microclimate or whatever, like, and what you feel comfortable with and all that stuff. So there's a lot of variables, but generally Mother's Day is the green light turns and the flags wave and everybody rushes out to get everything out in their garden, which is really exciting. Another thing that you can do is go by the soil temperature for your area. I'm excited because just last year, Stanwood got its own, what's it called? Soil temperature measuring station. I just Googled soil temps in Washington, or sorry, in Stanwood, and it's, what is it, University of Washington, Wazoo, Washington, whatever, the one on the east side of Washington, sorry. I didn't grow up here, so I always mix up the 2 colleges. But they actually keep you search by county and it shows all the cities, so you can select the one closest to you. Of course, getting your own temperatures is always the best, but if you don't have that option, then you can kind of get a range. Like I know last week, my soil about 2 inches down was 49 point something. So right at that 50 degree, which is the absolute lowest that you're going to want to transplant out heat-loving crops. And if you take your own temperatures on your soil, you want to do it in the morning before the sun has a chance to warm it up. Because once the sun hits it, it's going to give you incorrect readings. But anyway, so Mother's Day, or if you want to be more to the rule, you can take your soil temperatures. But that's kind of the time where you can start to gauge your situation and what the weather's going to be like, and go ahead and put your stuff out, you know, like. But one thing I do want to stress is that you want to make sure that you harden off your plants. And hardening off isn't, I have plants in the house on Tuesday, I harden off on Wednesday, and they're outside Thursday. Like, that's not how it works. It takes a while where you slowly introduce, and, you know, in the evening is better when it's not the harsh sun, and, you know, start it in small increments. And, you know, because those plants that have been inside have not experienced life, right? Wind, rain, even a slight breeze. Like our houses generally don't have breezes, or the sun rays and all that stuff. Artificial light just doesn't compare. So they'll get burned up, going to transplant shock and all that stuff. So take it, you've been nurturing these babies for a while, take a little bit of extra time to make sure and guide them out. Let's see, I talked about that. Okay, so I was thinking about, usually in these monthly gardening tips and tricks videos for the Pacific Northwest, Zone 8B-ish, I talk about, because it's like, at first it was only a few things you can start inside, and then start more things inside, and then just only recently we've been starting to plant seeds outside. But this month, there's so many things that you can direct sow outside. And so instead of going through that list, I thought I'd do the reverse of going through things that it's kind of too late to sow or getting really close. Now, again, like everything, this always depends on your microclimate, because and also where you are in relation to me. You know, like if you're Northern California, for instance, it's going to be, or I presume at least that it's going to be different. But so with that, one thing to note is that spinach and Asian greens are going to be really sensitive to hot weather. And so that kind of depends again on where you're at and the type of sun you get, if it's too late for you or not. For me, I'm still okay. I just have to be careful. If it gets too hot or whatever, I just know that my plants will go to seed prematurely. And I still eat the leaves, but I don't sell them because it changes the flavor just a little bit. But I made a list that I can follow. So the first thing is onions. And the reason I talked about my last video is that onions their bulbing is dictated depending on length of hours of sunlight. So if you were to, which right now I don't remember, but we're long days, right? And so if I were to plant a seed, it's gonna be like, oh, it's a lot of sun, I should start bulbing, but it doesn't even have the greens to support the bulbing. So onions, a little too late for those. You're always welcome to experiment, but by my experience, it's too late. Leeks are not the case though. You can still plant leeks. Matter of fact, if you want fall leeks, I would get on that pretty soon. Next is garlic. And that's just because of the long amount of time that it takes. Again, always welcome to experiment, but it's a little too late for the garlic. Then there's peppers, eggplants, and tomatoes. And I lumped those all together, and I think it would actually be in that order. Eggplant, I think, takes the longest, followed by peppers. They need a long time. Tomatoes are actually, I find, really quick. Really, really quick. If you are absolutely dead late and you haven't planted any tomatoes or anything and you don't want to buy starts, you can always give it a try. I would get a determinate or get like smaller size tomatoes. Like you're not trying to grow those big beefsteak slicers, you know, like a saladette or a cherry tomato. I think you might be okay. And it of course depends on the weather, but for all intents and purposes, you're kind of past the window of starting new heat-loving crops like eggplants, tomatoes, peppers. The turkeys agree, of course. Then also asparagus crowns. If you've purchased those or you're sitting on them, one year I want to add that to my farm. But same thing, they need to build up the energy and the roots and all that with absorbing the sun and the ferns and stuff. So if you haven't planted them or if you haven't purchased them or whatever, it's a little too late for that. Then there's fava beans. I am experimenting with late season fava beans, and they were started about, 3 weeks ago. And it's kind of an experiment. I've got 16 little babies. And I'm just trying to see like how that works or whatever. But I'm not necessarily counting on them. It's kind of just seeing for myself what it does. And then celery is such a slow grower. I mean, it just moves at a snail speed. And so if you haven't gotten your celery down or out or whatever, you might have missed the ball on that one. And lastly are peas. if you, and remember, these are just starting. If you still have them inside or whatever, that's not, or you're buying transplants, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying these are two. It is likely that all the items I just listed, it's too late to go out and start them today, is kind of what I mean by that. And so for peas, peas do not like, and these I'm talking about, well, I guess all peas, but not beans or whatever, dry beans. But peas, they love cool weather. That's why peas go so great in our maritime weather. They love just it being cool, and they don't do well when it gets hot. And when it gets really hot, they die. We've all seen them get all like yellow and spindly and just die. And so that's what they do. Again, with all the list, you're more than welcome to experiment for yourself. But for me, that would be my advice, the likelihood of all those things. But anyways, moving on. So potatoes. You are also at the end of your potato planting period. I did plant tomatoes within the last week myself, but you want to get those in pretty quickly. I know some people like to get them in super early and some people wait a little bit longer. If you have your seed potatoes on hand, I would get those into the ground ASAP. If you haven't ordered them but plan to, you might want to think about waiting a little bit or looking at your specific microclimate and see if it would still support that. One thing to do now in May that's really important, especially if you're expanding your garden or you have a new garden, is you want to create a watering plan / schedule. And what I mean by that is if you are growing in containers, and especially black containers that are smaller, you want to be careful because they're going to need water every day when it's hot. There's no, the plant can't go and mine water from the earth because they're in a container. And so, or if you, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people make is just, or you spread things out, and you know, the first week it's so exciting to go around to the different areas with the hose and get all those. But when summer kicks in and life and barbecues and work and kids and, you know, whatever, more gardening, it's hard to make it around to everywhere. So come up with like a plan of, and make sure you have everything, you know. Do you want to water something with a hose with your hand? Do you want to use a sprinkler? Do you have the sprinkler, the correct sprinkler, whatever kind you want to use? Are you going to water, you know, like, what's the plan for that? So just know that, because that's something that is a struggle, I think, for a lot of new gardeners. Also, don't forget the saying, if you are watering correctly, remember the saying, don't feel guilt over midday wilt. And that happens. Even a well-watered plant in the heat of the day in summer, and this is probably like August, right, will droop a little bit during the day when it's hot. It doesn't necessarily, the plant itself is trying to conserve its energy and like basically taking a nap, assuming it's well watered. If it's not well watered, then it's really struggling. But just have a plan for that. And lastly, I want to talk, this kind of covers into June, excuse me, but I figured that I would just get it covered in case like that video isn't out. But if you're growing garlic, you're going to have garlic scapes. And if you don't know what those are, they're amazing. I love to make pesto out of them. They basically taste like onion, garlic. I like putting them in pasta. I like just everything. I absolutely love them. But it's like the flower part of the garlic that comes out, and you're going to want to pull those. I'll do a video when I get mine. But just so you know, when you see something growing out the top of your garlic, and you'll notice it because it'll be different consistency, not the flat leaves. And then when it starts to curve, that's when you pull it out. And then from there, it's usually like 30 days and you're harvesting garlic, usually on average, right? And so I just want you to be aware of that. If you're a brand new garlic grower, just keep your eyes out for those little like flower stalk things. And like I said, you do want to pull them because you want the plant to put all of its energy into the bulb and not the flower, of course. Unless you want garlic flowers, you can do that as well. You can do anything you want. But so, yeah, happy May. I'm so excited. I hope this video was informational. If you have any questions, leave those down below. Thank you for watching, especially if you watched all the way to the end. I appreciate it. And happy gardening. Go plant that corn. Bye.